to me, though, isn't really a bad speed dating hookup as it is an arranged marriage.
Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show on cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, digital executive producer for Fox 61 in Hartford. This is my friend Glenn Packman, who is from Fairfield County in Connecticut, beautiful Fairfield County, improv comedian and car enthusiast. And also my friend Jeff Buchholz, who is from Chicago, WBBM in Chicago, and he's a writer and editor there and another car enthusiast. I keep collecting car enthusiasts in my life. So,
As
gentlemen,
you should, as anyone
yes,
should, really.
right,
Yeah.
right. If nothing else, then they can give you rides places if you should need them. Uh, So, big news of the past couple weeks. There's two companies in Japan that are looking to get together. And so I said, what would that look like to an advice columnist? And this is what I came up with. I recently got engaged after a very quick courtship. I'll admit I'm not the best catch around. I have financial problems, my clothes are outdated, my parents are divorced, and some people think that I'm weird. My betrothed, on the other hand, is an only child of parents who have been together a long time. My partner excels at almost everything they do and is well regarded in the community and is financially stable. Do you see us having a future? Signed, Your Garage or Mine. Um, anyway, so we are obviously talking about Nissan and Honda, who have a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that says we're going to explore something, something being together, something, you know, something going on. And it took me a little bit by surprise because of the rapidity with which it happened. Um, but I was wondering, Jeff, what do you think about Nissan, Honda, and on the other side of it, Mitsubishi somewhere running around in the middle?
Yeah, I love your advice column analogy for this. I would love to read the response from my personal favorite advice columnist, Judith Martin, Miss Manners. Gentle reader. While Miss Manners doesn't know anything about cars, blah blah blah. Um, this, apart from being a this isn't, to me, though, isn't really a bad speed dating hookup as it is an arranged marriage.
Mhm.
The Japanese government uh, is involved here as the overbearing parents of both Honda and Nissan. And I think the reason this is happening so quickly and is happening with these two companies is because of what would happen if it didn't come to pass. And that would be that, according to the reporting I've seen, Foxconn, the Taiwanese electronics company, one of the major suppliers for Apple's iPhone, um, or some other Chinese Chinese business concern would buy Nissan. And and we've talked about this before, Nissan is in a very weak spot, as you pointed out in your letter to the late Ann Landers, my former fellow Chicagoan. Um, the product is just now getting reinvested in after years of being allowed to wither on the vine under the sort of mismal and nonfeasance of the former CEO, Carlos Ghosn. Even before that whole thing came unraveled, the company was relying on, lots of incentives to move cars, which is how a perfectly fine car like the Nissan Altima now is known as the car for people who can't get car loans. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
which is a shame for a company that actually, I was thinking about this this afternoon. has produced really some of the great cars of Southeast Asia, from the original Fairlady Z or the 240 to the 510 to the Skyline to the original Pathfinder, even the Pulsar NX with that modular sportback thing.
Yeah.
Like, this was a company that was innovative, and indeed in this country was in the lead on EV tech, and then just allowed its clock to get cleaned by almost everyone.
Right.
And by contrast, as you point out, that Honda, while not as big in other countries as it is in the United States, is a strong, financially strong company with a
Hmm.
solid electrification strategy. Their hybrids do really well. Their SUVs are extremely competitive. I think Acura outsells Lincoln in the
Good.
U.S., and they're certainly in a place to be a stronger partner. This is no Dieter Zetsche merger of equals thing like back in the Daimler Chrysler days. This is not that. But when you have a situation where reporters are asking the CEO of Honda, so what does Nissan bring to this, and what makes them a strong business partner?
Yeah.
And he's forced to say, God, that's a difficult one. Like, you do sort of wonder if if those kids are gonna work it all out in
Right.
the end.
Right.
But I suppose that they will, because they don't have much choice. And
Mhm.
what form both of these companies take after the merger is something we'll probably be talking about. But it certainly remains to be seen at this point, at least in the short term, what that's going to look like.
Yeah. Glenn, what are you thinking about it?
Well, first, I'd like to answer as Ann Landers to your letter, and she would say, Dear Garage, wake up and smell the coffee, Toots. Wipe those clouds from your eyes. I'm being silly. I I'm I've been trying. Well, first off, a couple people know that I do this, and like non-car people have been like flocking to me, like WTF with Honda and Nissan, and these are people who know nothing about
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah.
So just this is a big deal. This is when we get that ripple effect into everyman territory, then
Real
people
life.
are paying
Yeah.
attention. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, well, it's a huge automaker and another pretty huge automaker. So but I'm struggling to get my mind around what the company is after it happens, because their product lines are so ideally kind of lined up. I mean, the Civic and the Sentra and the Honda Accord and the Nissan Altima, and it just keeps going from there,
Right.
And so, what do we end up with product wise? Now, I can understand why this is happening. I think Nissan is in a world of hurt. I have a close friend here who has owned nothing but Nissan product for years, and got rid of his latest Rogue because the car was such an extraordinary piece of junk. It
Hmm.
leaked. It leaked water into the cabin. It leaked oil. It broke down constantly, and this is not good for a Japanese make. To have that kind of stain on your record. Uh, he he got a Chevy instead, and I'm a little bit that we're in the upside down when a Chevy is more reliable than a Nissan, because we're kind of used to the other way around. But I guess ups and downs, right? But either way, I don't know where things would land with this, and I'm struggling to get my mind around it. Uh, Nissan still has some good selling models. I just read a report on sales for November of 2024, and the 20th on the list, which is down far, but it's still a lot of units, was the Nissan Sentra. Now, it didn't sell nearly what the Civic sold, but it's, you know, 20th in sales in the US is still pretty good. There's a lot of companies that aren't even hitting the top 20, and there's a Nissan there. So there's value there. And yeah, it would be great if Honda could come in and say, okay, well, we need to clean up the following things, but do we still have two companies and competing product lines? I don't know. I'm mystified.
Yeah. And I think about that. Here's my thought on it. you have Kia and Hyundai,
Yeah.
and to the point where both those companies have cars that sometimes I can't tell apart. You know, the Kona. The only reason I remember the Kona is not a Kia is because they don't make a Kia Kona. They don't have two, Ks.
Right.
But they they seem to have obviously the same platforms, the same underneath everything, and they're able to sell them to different places. I,
Sure.
I think that there's all these different places that the products are right in line, like you said, uh the Sentra and the Civic and the ILX and the small Infinity and the Accord, Passport, Pilot, Nissan Altima, Maxima, Murano, and all you have all these things there. You know, do you sacrifice some of Honda's specialists to to cost cut? I don't think that's a good move.
Right.
I think, but I tried to read the and understand the memorandum of the press release for the memorandum of understanding, and it's very uh, press releasey written, right? It gives them a lot of outs, right? We're thinking about this and we don't know, and we're going to look at it. And we're going to kind of, tread carefully, and maybe that's the way to go. Maybe they take and pull their all their finance things together. Maybe they take this, maybe they decide, okay, well, we're going to take all the EV stuff and put it together
Mhm.
because that's really where Honda is lacking. I mean, they do fine on hybrids, but they don't, they're buying their EV from somebody else,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, so I think there's a lot of different pieces to it, and it, in the classic journalism tradition, it remains to be seen, but it's interesting,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
and I think they have to do something. Nissan had to do something, or they were going to become, the subsidiary of a Chinese automaker,
Right.
which they don't want, right? And the country doesn't want that. Jeff, you said this that
Right.
the government is probably somewhere behind this saying, you know what, you
Yeah.
guys really should talk. I found it interesting that the head of Toyota said we weren't even approached. I don't know. I don't know
I mean,
why.
Toyota's already got so many irons in the fire right now, and we've talked about
This
that
is
on
true.
this podcast before between Lexus and tie-ups with Subaru
Mhm.
and Mazda and Hino and Daihatsu, and they've got so much, and then this joint venture with BMW. They got enough stuff going on,
Right.
frankly. Um, and this could all go wheels up
Yeah,
also.
Yeah.
Like, because
Sure.
as you point out, part of the deal is that Nissan has to get its financial affairs in order, which it feels like, you know, Carlos Ghosn kind of threw a bowling ball through the alley there and just kind of got into his cello case and left or whatever. Um,
yeah,
I think they're still trying to figure out just how bad things are there. But they still have to get their stuff in order. And remember that when we're talking about Honda, we're dealing with a company that has, I think, been as successful as it is by being really strategic and really conservative.
Yeah.
This is a company that has still, to my recollection, never developed a V8 engine, ever.
I wouldn't say that you're wrong.
And and resisted a V6 for the longest time
Mhm.
until finally with the arrival of the Acura Legend slash Rover 827, sort of felt like decided that they had to. Um, they're clearly Honda's not going into this thinking that this is all going to be, sunshine and rainbows. They're doing their due diligence as they should. And hopefully Nissan can get itself together. The one area where the companies don't have much overlap is in an area that has traditionally been big for the United States market, is light trucks. And even there, the Nissan Titan is going away, or has gone away. They tried really hard to sell those things to Americans, and it kind of didn't work out. The Frontier, while a heavily reskinned version of the one that came out in 2005 or '06, still sells really well and is pretty competitive in market. The Armada, which is the patrol elsewhere in the world, isn't really a bad option in that big body on frame SUV class, which is one that Honda doesn't play in at all. That's really about the only sort of area where one company has an advantage over the other one. But in terms of regular SUVs, sedans, minivans, 2-row and 3-row crossovers, luxury imprints, Honda's got it all over Nissan, at least in the United States. The most popular GM Ultium-based car in America is the Honda Prologue.
Yeah, I heard that today.
And I don't know, I've seen several of them out like in public over the last couple of weeks or so. So people are buying.
Huh.
So
I have not
Do you
seen
think they know what they're getting?
do
you think they know what they're getting?
I don't know how much normies care about that, honestly.
Yeah.
I think GM seems to have smoothed out the issues with the Ultium platform. One of the nice things about the Honda and the Acura, the ZDX, which is also an Ultium car, is that unlike the other vehicles on the Ultium platform, the Honda cars run CarPlay.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the arrogance of General Motors aside, I do think that having an interface, an electronics interface, like mirroring your phone, which is something that people have gotten used to, is a huge selling point over having to remember a car's native operating system. Once you buy it, you spend some time with it, you'll figure it out. But why do I need to do that if I can drop my phone onto a mat or plug it in and I get the same interface wherever I go?
Right. Yeah. They sold 1.4 million vehicles last year. Honda did. That includes Acura. Nissan, just about a little bit under a million.
Is that U.S. sales, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that's US. And the dealership, let me see my notes here. Honda in the US, Honda has about 1,000 dealerships, as does Nissan. Acura, there's about 270. Infiniti has 170, 197 rather. In Connecticut, 14 Honda dealerships and 20 Nissan dealerships. It's yeah. I don't know. I think they'd be okay if they stayed out of each other's lane. You know, I think they could probably do it, but it's a risk for Honda. That's where I see it. I just see it's a real risk for Honda.
I want to
Glad you
add
were
a
saying?
layer. I want to add a layer to the lane thing, and this is just hypothesizing, but um, uh, Nissan has the only new car in the United States available under $20,000 in the Versa. And that is a Strippo Versa, believe me. But it's still the only new car available under 20 grand now. That the Mitsubishi Mirage is no more, a car I am so sorely going to miss. But that was sarcasm. But my thinking is, what if they tiered it so that Nissan becomes the budget brand? I mean,
The Chevy.
the Chevy, Honda becomes the Buick, Acura becomes the Cadillac, and then I'm sorry, but Infinity has no place in the lineup anymore. And I don't. We already discussed in another cast that
Right.
that Infinity is kind of in trouble anyways. But that would be an interesting way to tier it. I
Yeah.
don't care what anybody says. You can get a Sentra for less money than you can a Civic. Is it as good a car? I haven't driven a Sentra recently, so I can't say. But I can say that I had a rental Altima recently, and I had a rental Honda Accord, both the latest version. And honestly, I would be hard pressed to say that one was, phenomenally better than the other. I really did like the Accord. I found the seating to be horribly uncomfortable.
Right.
And I thought the Altima it felt solid and it ran like a top. I do think that the sight lines weren't all that good. So would I prefer the Accord? Yeah, of course I would. I think stylistically it's saying a lot more, but I think you're going to get an Altima for much less than an Accord. So maybe that's the tier structure. Maybe that's
I,
what they're
I
towards. I don't
yeah,
know.
I think and my understanding is that they've revamped their CVT, which was a
Oh,
bone
yes.
in
Oh,
like a
I,
thorn in
yeah.
their side for years and years.
Yeah,
Oh my
I
gosh.
drove a past generation Altima with the CVT, and it was an atrocious piece of machinery. The
Yeah,
Altima that I had in Milwaukee last summer was really not bad.
yeah,
It didn't stand out as being annoying. I only noticed it a couple times where I was like, should we be shifting? But I mean, they've really come a long way in making it more palatable. They're still not my favorite transmissions in the world,
yeah.
but it's light years better than what it used to be. So, but yeah, if people prefer, a 6, 7 speed, whatever, let's get them in there, and start playing to the audience.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. And I sort of said this before about Kia and Hyundai. Do you see them as being equals, or do you feel like one is a little bit higher than the other? I'm just asking because I that's my impression that they are kind of equal, but I don't know if that's
I feel like Kia tends to be the personality brand. I don't know if sporty is the way to put it,
yeah,
but their design language I think is more sophisticated.
Sure.
Um, in terms of the product offerings, the cars all seem to have a point of view. And that's not even including how the Telluride somehow became like the must-have ride of the 2020s. Um, kind of improbably, actually.
Yeah.
Whereas Hyundai,
preferred by female news anchors everywhere.
yeah, well, yeah, and whereas Hyundai has felt more of more of the mass appeal brand.
Mhm.
Okay.
Though it certainly does, the brand certainly does take, sort of detours into high style. The Santa Fe is a triumph.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't mean a literal one like made by British Leyland, like an actual styling triumph. And the new Palisade is really pretty too.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I've seen it. I don't know if that, Glenn, if that
Okay.
works with your impression.
As a former Kia owner, we had two generations of the Sorento back to back. First off, both impressive cars, especially the second generation, which there has already been replaced. But we were blown away at the quality level of the car. They did everything right. But I think you calling it Kia the personality brand, I think is exactly right. The Soul is a perfect example of that. It's quirky and it's a little weird, and not everybody's going to love it, but it's also a ton of car for the money, and it certainly is the Soul. You just going down the street, you know that's a Soul going down the street when you see it. They've managed to keep the styling along the same lines generation after generation. And I think that's a good thing. It's not necessarily ugly, although some people would say, oh my God, I can't stand that car, but that's a matter of taste.
No.
But I really do think that Hyundai is more geared towards appealing towards a larger audience, whereas Kia is that quirky, kind of special brand. Frankly, I would be torn right now between the Sorento and the Santa Fe. I think they're both knockouts. I think I would go with the Santa Fe just because it's more of a statement, ironically enough. But, uh, you know, so they're splitting hairs a little bit, but I think these are okay hairs to split. I think there's enough room for them, and they're making good cars. And
Well,
that's
and the reason there's enough room for them is because their bread and butter continues to be, well, I mean, they still sell a bunch of crossovers, but I mean,
Mhm.
they are benefiting from the fact that the American car makers have abdicated to them sedans.
Yeah,
So they're duking it out with Honda and Toyota and Nissan.
yeah, yep,
Uh,
absolutely.
with I don't know where the sales figures are, but really very decent products at each of those points. I mean, I don't feel like there's this kind of, well, it has four doors and a trunk and we'll just get it out there. I think like the K4 and the K5 just really are good looking cars.
Yeah.
They're well built, well value, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've gone on about how great I think the K4 is. I think the Elantra is a super competitive car, particularly at the price point.
Mhm.
And yeah, exactly. They've certainly, we should. How have we not gotten a Hyundai Kia sponsorship for as much as we talk about how great they are? Honestly,
You're right. It's true.
I mean, we started out talking about Honda and Nissan, and now here we are talking about the Koreans again.
Yeah, well, but bringing it back to Honda and Nissan, I think
Yeah.
I think if this is what you want to do and you want to put some sort of barrier between you and China, that then or have build up. This is probably one of the only moves you can make, right? I think that there's outside of you know it being they sell Nissan, they sell Chrysler to Nissan.
Oh my God.
Like great, now we got Dodge truck and Dodges and Rams, and it's a
Yeah,
whole other thing.
right.
But in Nissan's, in their defense, like I said, new CVT. I think the patrol variants are getting good reviews.
Mm.
I think that they're finding some way forward. The sales were up minuscule amount. It remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, all right, that's going to be it for this week. Um, Remember to like and subscribe. All our YouTube information there. You can see a whole list of Car-Pinionated episodes. And we will see you next time.